Hey, welcome back to the shop. So, just a while ago, I was speaking to a fellow woodworker. I looked at their discard pile and found this little piece here. Looks like there was some issue with it, and I thought maybe I could finish what they started. So, come along and let's see what we can do with it.
Okay, let's go back and see what happened. Based on these four holes, I can tell that it was mounted on a faceplate that goes on the lathe like that. From there, they cut out this recess and rough turned this bowl. Obviously, it has not been sanded, which means they had further plans to come back and clean it up. This recess went on the chuck, pretty much like this. Right around here, looks like one of their tools got caught up on the bowl, knocked the piece out, pretty much like that. What's interesting to me is if we look back, right where it got knocked out, which is here, is where the recess broke. It then probably went flying across the shop, and that's where it picked up these marks. It went through a journey to get us to here. Let's see if we can give it a proper send off.
The recess is cracked, but I think there's enough of a hole to do some quick work on the face. Let's get to work. As I make my first cut into this piece, I do find myself thinking about how this would have looked so different had it been finished how it was originally intended. It might no longer be an empty canvas, but the possibilities are still endless. It only started as a small log in someone's shop, and it almost ended up in the scrap, but it's here now, and we can probably turn it into something that we can enjoy for the time to come. I think that's one of the more fun things about working with wood, and why I really like it as a medium. At this point in the process, my sole objective was to get that broken recess off because I couldn't really get anywhere while it was still at play. With a blank canvas, I could start thinking more about where I wanted to take this piece and the design I wanted to establish by the end. For this particular piece, I did set a challenge for myself. Somebody else had plans for this and they had put some work into it, and I wanted to respect that. And one of the ways I wanted to do that was to keep the original design and the intent the same. If you were to go back and look at my other videos, you know that I like nice big swooping curves. This particular piece, however, was more cylindrical, and I wanted to keep that, but I wanted to add just a little bit more embellishment to it. When it's a more complicated design, I usually like to go back and start with things that I know. The original piece had a recess. I knew that, so I marked up the dimensions for a recess for my chuck, and I started shaping the bowl around that recess. I trusted that the rest will come to me as I turn it. So far, everything was looking pretty good, and I'm just gonna get that mounting point established. So I'll probably be sending this video to John. That's who I got this piece from. So wish me luck, guys. I hope he likes it, and I'll be sure to update you guys with what he said later, if he says anything at all. Also, John's a great woodworker. I will leave a link in my description. He more makes furnitures, tables, things like that, with a bit of a humorous twist. You could check him out. What I'm doing here is sort of a clue to how I plan to embellish this piece a little bit more. So I'm putting my first bead right at the bottom of this bowl. I just hope it adds a little bit more character. With this bead, the only thing is I have to make sure it doesn't extend past the bottom of my bowl. One of the ways I can do that is by using a straight edge. I just want to make sure that it's resting on the intended base, and it was, so I'm on to scraping. I never like to leave the bottom of a bowl just flat because people do pick up bowls and look underneath it for whatever reason, and it's always nice to turn it around and you see a little bit more craftsmanship on either side of the piece. That's my suggestion or my recommendation to everyone who does this. Just add a little bit more character to the bottom of the bowl, and I guarantee you, people will appreciate it. So far, I've referenced an embellishment on the bowl a couple of times, and this is the point in the video where I think about how I can embellish the bowl a little bit more. The original shape of the bowl was already established, so I just wanted to add a little bit more flavor, and this is how I go about doing that. So originally it had an hourglass shape, and I wanted to give that a break, and the way I found I could do that was with a couple of beads as a transition to the top of the bowl. At this point, I would like to ask for some help. If any of you have any experience with doing beads, please let me know. I struggled a lot. I had to go back a couple of times and clean up the beads, and they were a little bit bigger when I first started, and I ended up with these. I think they look pretty good, but if you have any suggestions on how I can be more consistent with them, or if you have any practicing guides, I'd love to hear that from you. So this is the walnut wood appreciation part of the video. Uh, if you've already heard this a million times before, you could skip ahead. But walnut just is such a pretty wood. It's known for its straight grain, but when you use it for a bowl, I feel like you add another dimension to that. The patterns always look great, and the tutorials in this particular piece is quite exceptional. When you use a oil-based finish like I'm doing now, walnut has a tendency to really pop, and I hope you share my appreciation for how good the wood looks by the end of this. One of the things you don't see me do a lot in my videos, because I cut them out, is apply the finish or sand my piece. This is the same process I use for most of my bowls, but I just take a lot more time. I spend about 3 to 5 minutes doing each of my oil finishes. I also make sure to burnish it so the oil heats up and absorbs right into the wood. And that's how I finish most of my bowls, at least the ones that don't blow up. So that was all there was to finishing the bottom of the bowl. I now can flip it around and start coring out the inside. Just because it had more embellishment on the outside, the inside I wanted to keep pretty simple. Also, just because I had spent a lot of time on this bowl at this point, I wanted to get it finished soon. And that's not because of the reason you might think. I don't mind spending more time on a bowl. I rather like it. But have you ever made a pancake that's just perfect? You lift it up a little bit and you see a really nice crispy golden brown edge on it, and you're like, this is going to be the best pancake ever. And then you put your spatula under it and you flip it, and it goes everywhere. Now you have ruined the pancake. It's not going to be the best pancake that ever was. And that's exactly how I feel about my bowls. Because it was a simpler coring process, I was able to get to scraping quicker. However, there's this tight corner because it's a more cylindrical shape. I had to get another tool out. The narrower nose let me get into that curve really nicely, and I used it to smooth out that corner. I couldn't have gotten in with the bigger scraper. With walnut in particular, I don't like to struggle too hard with taking all those tool marks out because I've figured out that I need to sand walnut just a little bit more than other types of wood. But you can see by the time I'm done, the surface looks pretty good. I'll make a video about how I sand my bowls in the future. Put some finish on there, and we are at the end of this process. I think this thing turned out really nicely, but I am always very excited to hear what you guys think. I received a couple of comments in my previous videos, and I would really like to thank you. It is extremely motivating. It really is, and I'm very grateful for that. To everyone else, I'd like to thank you for watching this far. With that, we're at the end of the video. If you liked it, please like the video and please consider subscribing. I definitely plan to bring more content your way, and I hope you enjoyed this process. I have some other fun ideas in mind, and I'm excited to bring them to you. With that, I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching.